Howdy, fellas. Are you guys ready to engage in children's video games for sport and profit?
Sure.
You know it.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I spearheaded this nonsense right now. I was just over here talking about Pokemon with the guys, and wanted to. I was talking about how Pokemon sucks now. It's nothing like the good old days, and I wish I miss back when Pokemon was good, like everyone else does. And then I thought, hey, I wonder how good those ones actually are. Like, I haven't played them since I was a teenager, and I thought we should go find out. And so I bullied my buddy Austin and my brother-in-law. Are we doing code names? Are we doing real names? Do we care?
Yeah, I'm using my name.
I only have one name.
Okay, Christian it is. So Austin and Christian to play these through with me, and we're starting with Gen 1, and we're just gonna go straight down to at least, I guess, Gen 9 is out, but we're just starting with Red, Blue, and Yellow is what we started with. So but before we go any further, actually, we do have one point of order, gentlemen. An important point of order for any podcast, I believe, and that is, what are we naming this thing? So...
My official vote is the two dads and the other guy, since I'm the only non-dad here.
I like
half
it.
a dad, though. Okay.
My vote, which actually came courtesy of my wife, is Nerdy Deeds Done for Cheap.
Oh my word. I think that's pretty great. Yeah, I she doesn't even know that song. Or I guess she does from How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah.
That's great. I was going for the Gameboys or the Gameboys Advance. Those are my votes. So I guess I'll put in a little survey below, and yeah, we'll let the fans decide.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds good. So for now, we'll just pretend that we'll just rip off Brandon Sanderson, and we'll leave it intentionally blank. Okay, so that's what we're going to start with. So I thought from there we could talk a little bit about what's going on, what we're doing, what's up, how we've had fun. Everyone knows what Pokemon is, right? Like, it's only the largest media franchise of, like, all frigging time ever. So, it was started by a dude, and he was bug collecting, and he remembered that as a kid, and then he got into game making. He's like, what if we made bug collecting like a game? And then he saw, like, that the Game Boy that had come out semi-recently had this ability to, like, transfer data between... It's very little bit of data, but it could transfer... It was, like, the first, like... system that had the ability to, like, talk between other systems, right? And he's like, oh my gosh, what if you could trade bugs along a cable, like, kind of like I used to be able to trade bugs with my friends. And that was kind of where Pokemon started, right? So that's a little bit of history. It's fun. I think it's cute. Ironically enough, given that none of us are doing any trading in this playthrough, though, are we? So we're kind of spitting in the face of that. Christian,
Yeah.
You said you had found some fun facts related to it?
Yes, I have some fun facts revolving around Gen 1, and since you talked about just now about the bug collecting, interesting enough, the first Pokemon, there's a lot of debate about who the first Pokemon was. Some people say Bulbasaur because the Pokedex has him as 001. Others say Mewtwo, and actually the first one to fully be designed was Rhydon.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Which I think's really interesting, given that he is nowhere near number 1 on the Pokedex. You would think that they would start the first design with number 1, but that's not the case.
I think. Oh.
So I thought that was a pretty interesting thing. And a second thing that I found out, I was doing some research today just into things that not a lot of people know about Gen 1. And originally, so, we all know when you start the game, there's Professor Oak. And originally, you could battle him.
Oh, so there's like code that he was going to be a boss fight. I think I heard that as well, right?
Mm-hmm. He originally, before it was eventually cut, but they originally coded it so that you could battle him, I think, near the second half of the game, which I thought was pretty interesting.
I think I heard about that too, and that there was a isn't it that one of his Pokemon, he's a set team, but whatever his main Pokemon is the one that neither you nor your rival pick, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so I thought that's pretty cool. But yeah, so there's a lot of really interesting mystique around like this series, especially the older stuff, you know. I think that's pretty nifty. So I guess we could do more fun facts, or let's do a little bit about our history with Pokemon. So like, what was your first? I'll guess we'll start with Austin because he wants to avoid talking as much as possible. So I'm going to be mean to him. Austin, what was your first like exposure and interaction with like the Pokemon franchise?
Typically the first exposure that I had was, and I can't exactly remember which age I specifically was. It was probably very early middle school or late elementary. But I remember, as occasionally watching cartoons on the TV every so often, Pokemon would come on, and I'd just catch a couple episodes of Pokemon every so often, like, oh, that's a pretty cool thing. And then I was exposed around the same time to, like, other kids in the school having Pokemon cards and playing some Pokemon trading card games. But I never actually learned how to play the game. But I still, to this day, have like a stack of Pokemon cards that I still have no idea how to actually use them or any factor. But I just have some, I guess. So I don't know how I managed to accumulate any of those, but I got Pokemon cards at some point. And the first time that I actually getting involved in Pokemon was probably when I started playing Pokemon Diamond on my Nintendo DS, and that was pretty much my go-to game every time our family would go on any type of car trip. I sit in the back, open the Nintendo DS, and just start playing Pokemon Diamond and eventually Platinum and other games that I accumulated later, such as like the Game Boy ones like Ruby and some of the other older ones after the fact.
Nice. That's pretty awesome. So you were about how old, I guess, when you started playing Diamond?
That is a point where my memory is so bad I cannot pinpoint the age. I can guess an age, but it could be even before the game came out. I want to assume probably around 12 or 13.
Let me look at this. Pokemon Diamond release date. So Pokemon Diamond came out in 2006. So how old were you in 2006?
I was 9. So I guess I played it a couple years after it came out, but I definitely didn't get it when it was released. But.
Okay, yeah. So you were a little bit, a lot of people seem to get into the series when they're younger, but you were a little bit older compared to, although you were exposed to it earlier, but you didn't actually start playing the games until, you were a decent bit older, it sounds like.
Pretty much, yeah. I never obtained a Pokemon game when I was playing the Game Boy Advance. I played a large series of other games like Super Mario Bros. Or Yu-Gi-Oh! Games, but Pokemon never entered my gaming scheme until the Nintendo DS.
So it's really funny also that you mentioned that like you didn't ever learn to play the trading cards, but like I've experienced that as well. And Christian, you've probably seen even more of this than I have because you both went to not always. I was homeschooled my whole life, whereas y'all have had more experience in public places as well. But in my experience, people actually play like Magic the Gathering and Yu-Gi-Oh, but people collect Pokemon cards. I feel like I never see people actually playing the card game. Do you feel the same way, Christian? Or
I would definitely agree with that. I've never seen anyone play a card game, but I do have a very distinct memory of a friend coming over and looking at my Pokemon cards and wanting to take some home to show his parents, and I never saw them again.
Oh no!
Oh no!
Yeah, I think that really does tie into the nature of what the series is, because as you know, the catchphrase used to be "gotta catch 'em all," and like that's really, although we've gotten up to 1,000, and not everyone, there's been Dexit and all that nonsense that we'll get to when we get to that, but it is pretty ingrained, the idea of like collection even more than battling. You even see that going on to things like Pokemon Go and stuff. So That was your first interaction then, Austin. What about you, Christian? Where were you first really interacting with the series, and where did you first see it on the periphery before then?
So the series came out the year I was born.
Yeah.
I did not see it in my first year, unfortunately. But
Unfortunately.
I started with the series, similar to Austin. I started with the series. I'm playing the Pokemon cards. And I didn't get into the games until Ruby and Sapphire. Which
Okay, so you were a little bit, you were Gen earlier than Austin.
Mm-hmm. So I looked it up. Ruby and Sapphire came out in 2002. I don't think I got it right when they came out. So if I had to guess, I was probably around 6 or 7 at the time. Because I remember when Pokemon Emerald came out, and I had to have it, along with Fire Red and Leaf Green.
Yeah, okay, so you were really big on it once you got into it then, right?
Oh yeah, I had binders worth of Pokemon cards. I played the games religiously. Once they came out, I got the GameCube games, XD Gale of Darkness, Pokemon Coliseum, and I played the snot out of those. I did the trading where you could get the exclusives on Ruby and Sapphire, but you had to have like Gale of Darkness. I did all of that stuff. I was a Poké player growing up.
That's pretty great.
But funnily enough, I did get a DS, but that was the only generation that I ever really experienced. I've never encountered like Diamond and Pearl, even though from what I've heard, they're some of the best ones out there. It just kind of fell off for me. So I'm excited to get to experience that again.
That is fun. So yeah, like I think that's pretty common from what I've heard from most people. Is a lot of people. Some people are diehards and go through, but most people hit a certain age. Usually, it is about 9 to 12, is what I've read, and like you just burn through a gen or two, and then you kind of burn out of the series. Seems to be that's like when I said at the beginning, we were talking about that whole like, oh, I want to play back when they were good, and a lot of people joke was like, well, it was good when I was 9 to 12, and then it became bad. But that's part of what I'm interested as adults. Two possible podcast name, two dads and another guy. I'm interested to see with a different lens where we're not in the midst of it and we have a little bit more hindsight to see if the old ones hold up or not. So I think for myself, so Pokemon, funny story for me, Pokemon was banned. It was evil. My lovely, genuinely lovely, one of the like she is a saint. My father's mother said that Pokemon, she had been told by the preachers on the TV that Pokemon was of the devil, that it led you to being possessed by demons, and so you should never touch it. So it was banned hardcore at my house until the age of 12. But I remember being pretty darn young, probably about 6 or 7 myself, when I was really, because that's when it was sweeping the nation, right? Because I was born in the mid '90s, so by the time I'm 6, it's like early 2000s. The late '90s, early 2000s when it was in full force. So I remember distinctly, for instance, one day, this is a very early memory, that my mother promised to get me a reward by getting me some kind of candy. And we went to some store, and the only type of candy they had, every other machine was broken for some reason. The only type of candy machine they had was Pokemon-shaped candy. And I wanted to play with Pokemon so much that I refused to eat the candy. She said, don't play with it, it's demonic, just eat it as candy. But I hid the Pokemon-shaped candy tart things and used them as like makeshift action figures because I wanted to play Pokemon so much as a child. This is a true story. But
that's incredible.
It's like real. She caught me with like the Charizard one. It was like, I told you not to do that. And I'm like, I'm sorry, they're too cool. So that was my early memories. But so because of that, didn't get into the series until I was about 12, which is usually when a lot of people are falling out of it. So I got in, and I remember, I think the DS was out at that point. Diamond and Pearl may have even been out at that point, maybe not. But the first games I played were Fire Red and Leaf Green. Well, that's not true. The first games I played, very briefly, was at family event, and I got to play a little bit of Blue. And I was like, I love this. And then I was like, what's the latest one? And the latest one I could afford or had a Game Boy for was Fire Red, which was fine because the first thing I played was like playing with Charizard and Red. And I was like, oh, this is just the better version. So I got that, and then swam through Gen 3, and then did Gen 4, and then kind of fell off there myself. So pretty close to where y'all were, because I think. So you basically did Gen 3, and then Austin basically did Gen 4, and I did Gen 3 and 4. So all of our point of view, given that that's about the age, we're all similar in age, it seems like we all have kind of the same bias, which will be really interesting to see if that holds true going forward or not. Oh, one last thing before I end this, and I'll cut anything that's not fun. If any of the stories get lame, we can cut for time. But the reason it finally got unbanned in our house is we had some missionary friends who came back from Japan. And they were like, no, Pokemon's awesome. And they're like, well, but no, it's demonic. And they're like, no, it's awesome. And it's like, well, they're missionaries, so they must be real Christians, and they're not possessed by demons, and they like Pokemon, so maybe it's okay. And that was why it started becoming unbanned in the household. Maybe.
Darn Japanese missionaries.
Maybe Gran was wrong about the demon possessing. So that's kind of our history. I think that says where we were at and where we're coming from. We're all having a pretty similar bias, but I'm still interested to see what that is. So with all that being said, I'll bully Christian first, and then we'll bully Austin again. Knowing our history and the history of the series, looking at going through all of these games, and especially just starting with Gen 1, what are you hoping to get out of this experience?
I'm hoping to get just a better understanding of Pokemon in general, and just our culture as a whole, because Pokemon has played such a huge impact in just the development of just about everybody that I've hardly met anybody that hasn't had an experience with Pokemon. So it will be interesting to be able to kind of see everyone's perspective and really experience what the best generation is, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And then I'll mix up the order, so I'll go next, so I'm not always last. Similar to what you're saying, I'm really interested to see it as a cultural phenomenon. Why did some generations take off? Why did some not? Why is it, maybe it's because I'm older, but why does it feel like that the general consensus, at least till Scarlet and Violet, some people seem to like Scarlet and Violet a lot, but the general consensus is that at least since Gen 5, a lot of people feel like it started to go downhill, but it's still widely popular. It's making the thing prints money. So why is that? And how does it affect people? And honestly, I'll say this, it's not really what the podcast is about, but as Christians, which the three of us are, how can we look at something that's touched culture so much and use that to, help even spread the message of Christ? I don't want to get corny and oh, Pikachu holding the cross or anything like that. But this thing managed to tap into something that connects with people worldwide across ages. For 30 years, it's done this, right? So I'm interested in figuring out what about it did that and how we can use that to connect with other people. And also figure out, is the general consensus that it kind of just keeps getting better and better until around 4 or 5, and then it kind of dips pretty badly? Is that accurate? Was that just something to do with YouTube culture, or is it because we're in a bubble? So I'm interested to see, and how well do the older games hold up, and how bad are the new games really, I guess is what I'm interested in finding out. And are those that Gen 3 and Gen 4 that we all kind of hung around, are those really the good ones, or is that just because that was the age we were at? I'm interested to see. So what about you, Austin?
Well, you two have fun with your, big thinking moments going through these games. I'm just going to embrace the inner child in me and think, cool, I'm going to play some new video games that I haven't played before. And then eventually, when we finally get back to the 4th gen, get to re-experience some of the games that, quite frankly, hold a really high place in my ratings of games as a kid, as I played the heck out of Pokemon Platinum all the time. And personally, I say that it is my favorite Pokemon game, and I am curious to see if that holds true, or if I'll discover another gem in this Pokemon series and have a blast playing that one or not.
Oh, so do you think something could dethrone Platinum for you?
There's always a possibility. I think it might be pretty hard.
Okay. I guess you didn't say also, Christian, what was you said the ones you played, but out of those, which one was your favorite of the older games that you played as a kid?
Oh, I love Pokemon Emerald.
Emerald was your favorite?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's pretty cool. I think mine... Ooh, it's a toughie between Fire Red. I think I'm going to say Fire Red. Right now in my head, I'm more excited to play Platinum because I haven't... Because Platinum's the one I'm most excited to replay, but that's because I replayed Fire Red like 3 or 4 times, which makes me think that must have been the one I liked the most. But yeah, okay, so that's pretty good. So that's our... Okay, so that's... I might even split this into 2 podcasts, honestly. So that's kind of our history. What are we doing? Now, like, the meat of what we actually did, right? So we played up to Misty in this little run. We were going to do Brock, and we kind of did that in, like, 3 days. So I decided let's go to Misty. That's how far we got. So I guess we could just kind of go through what was our experience going back through Gen 1 all the way up to the 2nd gym. I guess we can kind of take it area by area. Does that sound like good to you guys?
That sounds good to me.
All right. Well, I kind of put it in the lexicon, so I guess if you wanted to argue about that, you should have done it earlier. So, all right. So we started with Pallet Town. You get like the most bare bones introduction, I feel like. It's really interesting playing Gen 1. Like I said, after playing, we all played 3 and 4 and maybe even some of the later ones, but that's kind of like what we've done. And this game is effectively running on a calculator, Like that's like, this is just on a fancy calculator, but it's really interesting to see, while it is super simplified, how much they managed to fit in, it felt like to me. Because there's barely a story. The story is like, hey, you should go talk to this old man. And then the old man is like, you should have a Pokemon. And it's like, go forth. Like, it is pretty clear that story is not at the front and center. Because this is 1998 when it hit America. It's out in 1996 in Japan, but it's still, late 90s. We have story-driven games, like the types of games that people feel are like genre-defining. I'm pretty sure, like Ocarina of Time, Final Fantasy VII, whether you like it or not. Metal Gear Solid may have been 19, maybe a year later, but this is all around, that's like games have had meaningful stories at this point. And while this is on the Game Boy, where that's maybe a lot more limited because this is more like an NES, it's an 8-bit console. It's pretty clear that they could have put a bigger emphasis on story if they wanted, but they didn't. Were y'all getting any feelings, or what were y'all's impression about that first town, when you started the game up?
I definitely agree with what you're saying. It's very, very basic. They really didn't dive into story. They have little conversation pieces just for fun, but story-wise, there's really not much meat there. Just kind of, hey, you're a child, take this incredibly dangerous creature and go catch more.
Great. Austin, any first impressions when you're starting it up? Any nostalgia? I guess you wouldn't have had that, but anything? What were you thinking as you're going through this as like a new game to experience?
Okay, well, for context, I am playing the Pokemon Yellow version of the game, which the introduction is slightly different from what I'm hearing compared to your guys' run-through. Nostalgia thing, it just starts off, you're a kid, you wake up in your house, you're like, oh, cool. Basic start of Pokemon is pretty much, I think, every other Pokemon game typically starts out with. You go find the professor, you go get your Pokemon. But in Pokemon Yellow, in case for anybody doesn't know, the game essentially makes you play with Pikachu as your starter. You don't get to pick between the 3 starters. And what made that kind of funny to me is how they kind of handle that is you go to Professor Oak and he's like, okay, cool, I have a Pokemon here for you. It's on the table. And then your rival's like, no, shoves you on the floor and says, this is mine, and steals it from you, which I found a funny change of pace for anything. And then Professor Oak just hands you your Pikachu, and then you move on that way, and he gets his Eevee. So the fact that it changed up with you just getting pushed to the side by your rival was kind of funny, and something that I haven't seen any in the Pokemon games. So it's a nice fresh start on that one.
That is pretty funny. Yeah, because that's a big thing. You're playing the yellow version, which came out a year later in the US. So that was 1999, your version. It's pretty similar. You've got some different sprites. I'm actually going to... I forgot to do this. I'll do this at the end during the fun facts, but I'm going to show some pictures of some of the derpier sprites and how they've been changed in yellow, because I think that's pretty funny. But... your version is more based on the anime was really, really popular, as everyone here knows, and So they said, we're going to make a version that's kind of still the game, but follows the anime a bit closer. So they give you a special Pikachu that's supposed to be a lot like Ash and his Pikachu. It follows you around on the field, which is a fun feature. You can check in with it, like on how it likes you. It has, I think it's got some better stats, and it won't evolve to Raichu, a lot like the Pikachu in the anime. So that's some little fun differences there. So you already mentioned that you started with a Pikachu, Austin, kind of by force. You didn't really get to pick. I ended up going for my starter with a Charmander, a decision that I knew I would regret when I got to Brock, but I was not prepared. But I've always loved Charmander. He's the most popular in terms of starters. Like, that's just, I'm not very original. I was a child and I've just stuck with it. I think the others are cool. I don't think he's like the only one that's cool, but I ended up going with him because he's my favorite Pokemon. So I was like, I have to. What'd you pick, Christian?
I chose Bulbasaur and I named him Billy.
You named yours Billy. Is there a reason for Billy?
He just looked like a Billy.
Hi there, Billy. so yeah, I named mine Lander because that first Pokemon Blue that I played, I told you before, that I had played very briefly at a family trip before I got to, have my own, get to play my own game. I got to I picked a Charizard on that version, and we were passing a car dealership named Landers Automotive or something like that in Florida on some trip, and I was like, I'll name him Lander then, and that's just stuck ever since. So I always get a Charizard named Lander. And what did you name yours, Austin?
I am a loser and did not give him a nickname, so he's just Pikachu.
He's just Pikachu. You're going all out.
Classic.
All right, cool. So any other impressions about just kind of the first town or anything? Oh, one other thing I noted was it is interesting. I don't mean this to be degrading, and I'm not trying to pick on a game that was made in, man, there's so much good about it, but I don't feel like the NPCs are characters. I do feel like the fact that every single thing they say, or almost all of it, is like a tutorial. I know there's some of that's not the case, but it does not feel like a living, breathing world, if that makes any sense. Like, it feels like a game that you are let loose in, not like a place with characters that have lives, to me at least.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would agree with that, yeah.
But yeah, so you start off in your adventure. We got our Pokemon. We set out, and you initially go basically and get what are you even getting for Oak? Like a parcel or something? It doesn't matter. You go get a very tiny MacGuffin at the next town over, and then come back. Like, that is all that is about. Not too much going on there. Although, a fun fact: did all of you run into the old man before you went to get the parcel and you were trying to head north?
I did not.
You didn't?
I did, yes.
Okay, you did. So yeah, for most of I wonder if yellow's different, but at least for most of them, you go up and there's an old man who's like, oh, I'm so tired, and they're like, oh, we need to get him his coffee, and you get him his coffee after you talk to Oak again, and it's like, he can teach you how to catch Pokemon in a bit. But two fun facts. One, I appreciated that he's like, do you want me to teach you how to catch Pokemon? And I was like, no. And in a game that doesn't have a ton of quality of life features, the fact that you could skip that tutorial was kind of wonderful. The second thing is, obviously, in the original, I don't know if everyone knows, or do you know this fun fact? Do you want to say this fun fact, Christian? Do you know it?
I'll let you have it.
Okay, you know it, though. I don't want to steal your thunder too much.
I'm not sure what you're going to say.
Okay, then I will say it. Okay, the fun fact is that in the original, Japanese script there, it isn't, he's not just tired and passed out there. He's drunk and you have to go sober him up. That is what's actually going on in the original game, but obviously Nintendo of America in 1998 or so on didn't want to, have that in a children's game. So they made some changes. So yeah, I think that's fun. Did you guys do the optional battle against your rival in that town with the old man?
Yes.
How did that go for each of you?
Not well.
Did you lose to him?
I did.
He kicked my butt. I was shocked. He's so over-leveled for where you're at.
He is.
Friggin' Brock's like highest Pokemon is 14, right? And that's like a whole maze away, you know? Like, and his highest I'm pretty sure like his Pidgey is like level flipping like 12 or something insane. It was just brutal. Did you fare any better, Austin, or did you even run into him?
If this is the fight where you go to the left of the town and bump into him, I did fight him, and he critted every attack, and I died.
Oh, that's worth mentioning at this point. We each set ourselves a few rules about how we were going to play this game as well that I meant to mention. Why don't we just go down the list? Austin, what is your kind of self-imposed, maybe not a challenge, but like verdict to yourself while playing this game?
Well, in my headcanon, every game has a special prophecy of a chosen Pokemon that will reign supreme over all the others. So I just catch one Pokemon or do a starter, and then I just designate them the chosen one, and I beat the game using only them. But of course I get some HM slaves they only exist to learn HM abilities and use that. I refuse to use them in combat, and see how far I can get that way. And I've played that way most of the time, even when I was a kid.
That's the way I played where I have others, but I did have one that was severely over-leveled, but I've gone away from that somewhat. Christian, what's your self-imposed challenge, though, this time?
So I grew up similar to Austin. I used to just have the one that was OP, and I would level up as much as possible. But throughout starting out, I'm learning the benefits of choosing your types wisely. So I'm trying to diversify my Pokemon cast, but I've also decided no health items during battles. Like, I'll use health items like while I'm going through the forest or something in between battles, but not during. And I'm not going to use any items that will level up my Pokemon or that will affect their stats. So like attack X, things like that. I'm not going to use those, but I will use items that will evolve my Pokemon. But I won't I won't just feed them rare candy until they're 99.
Well, there usually aren't that many in the game, but yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then you were originally going to Nuzlocke, but then you decided not to at the last second, right?
Yeah, I chickened out.
Well, I don't blame you, because your first fight you got killed, like in that random toss trainer battle at the beginning with your rival, like the very first one. You got insta-killed, didn't you?
He critted me 3 times in his 4 attacks. So I got wrecked.
That's so good. I'm so sorry. Yeah, and then my rule is I am doing similar to Christian, except for I don't mind using items to improve anything, but my rule is I won't have any of my Pokemon go above the highest level of the of the gym specifically. So I look up, hey, the next gym, like I look up Brock's 14 on blue, right? So none of my Pokemon are allowed to go above 14 until I hit Brock. Originally I wanted to also have it so like if the gym has 2, I'm only allowed to use 2 or something like that. But foreshadowing, mistakes were made, and that was not going to be possible and have me still beat the game. So that rule at least has been tossed out. However, I am still keeping the the level rule because as a self-imposed challenge. So yeah, that's how we're all playing the game at least. Okay, so got the old man. We battled our rival. It was rough. Did we all? No, yeah, we all lost against him, didn't we? Except for or Austin, did you not?
No, he's crushed me every time.
Yeah, so that rival battle out of nowhere, stupid. So yeah, it's kind of funny. What do y'all think about the bully rival, where he's just kind of a jerk and he's like, "Smell you later," and runs off? Like, he seems to have the most character out of any character so far. He's the only. I feel like everyone else is an NPC, and he's like also being like a small child, like running through this world with a dangerous animal, as you described it earlier.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was physically abused by him first thing, so great impression.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So we oh my gosh, it was pretty funny. But then, yeah, hang on, let me look something up real quick. Okay, yeah, so the other thing I ran into pretty quickly was that, in terms of catching Pokemon, right? I knew Brock was coming up. We've all done this. That's where we're headed to. We're headed to Brock. I know he's Rock. I also know my Charmander is going to be pretty weak against Rock. So I'm looking for something to damage him with. So I run around and I'm like, I'm going to get a Weedle, right? That's my plan, is to get a Weedle at least, because even though bugs aren't that strong, I can turn it into a Beedrill eventually and use poison to beat Brock. I think maybe if I can't win, I can still poison him and just kind of outlast him. But then I realized also, and Weedle's weak against Rock, so I'll just get a Rattata, and in the process of getting a Rattata, I also happened to catch a Pikachu. So that was kind of what I was doing at that point. So I ended up going towards Brock with initially with a level 14 Charizard, a level 12 Beedrill, a level 12 Rattata, and a level 4 Pikachu. And I was like, okay, my plan again basically here is to poison him, and then just switch to Charmander and Rattata to just kind of tank hits while the poison kills him. However, I ran into a small problem. Do you want to know in Gen 1 what items Brock has on him? We've played the later games. Usually you get one full restore and one hyper potion, right? That's what most of them have in the newer games, at least. Yeah, yeah. No, not in this one. No potions on Brock in Gen 1, but 10 full status heals. They're called full restores. So that's it. So poison was not gonna work. So he just kept the entire match was just me trying to poison him insta healing again and again and again and again until I got completely wiped, unfortunately. Yeah, so that was my first experience fighting Brock. Did you guys, when you got to him, were you able to just clean his clock, or did he pose any kind of threat? And did Viridian Forest pose any kind of threat for y'all?
For me, by the time I got to Brock, my Bulbasaur had learned Vine Whip. So even though I went in with, like you said, he was level 14, I went in with a level 11 Bulbasaur, and I one-shotted both of his Pokemon. Because the power and type advantage is strong. Well,
and you also had Stab. Do you know about Stab?
I don't have Stab yet, no.
You do have Stab. No. Stab is it's called same type attack bonus. So it's not just, so you get a very big damage increase from super effective moves, obviously. So, however, you also get a 50% damage increase when you use a move that is the same type as your Pokemon. So because you have a grass Pokemon and you have a grass move, you're getting the Stab bonus as well as a super effective bonus. So you're just really layering on the damage modifiers for him.
Okay. I did not know it was called Stab.
Yeah, same type attack bonus, yeah. Alright, so what about you, Austin?
So for me, Viridian Forest was pretty easy. I just zapped everything in the forest to death with Pikachu. The real fun difficulty part came when I had to fight Brock because, Electric is not good against ground type. And any normal move I learned was not very effective against his rock types either. And since I was only rolling with the Pikachu, I had to embrace the lessons of Space Jam and just slam him to death repeatedly. And barely came out alive.
Do you remember what level your Pikachu was around that time?
I can find that out because I know I grabbed a screenshot of it. Let me see.
Okay, you got that. While you're grabbing that, I'll finish my story, though, because, so I got completely wiped, as I mentioned, and I was like, well, that's frustrating. So then I started grinding, and, full disclosure, we're all emulating one way or another here, even the, Christian, you're on your 3DS, but you're still, it's still an emulation, but I, no shame, fast-forwarded, because I was like, I've got to do this. So what ended up happening was, I went in because I got wiped. So I went in with a level 14 Pikachu, a level 14, I think he was still a Rattata at that point, a level 14 Beedrill, and a level 14 Charizard. And after 7.5 falcon hours of grinding, I managed to kill him. Oh my word, it was just absolutely brutal. It was the type of thing, like, that's the type of thing that really is where it shows its age. This game, while it's really cool, does feel held together with, like, duct tape and, like, chewing gum, basically. Clearly, like, and I am doing a bit of a self-imposed challenge, because you could get, like, I'm pretty sure, Austin, yours was above the 14 line, and they lower Brock mildly so that he's, like, level 12 or something at that point, I think. But, I could have, had one character get stronger, but I am doing some of this myself. But clearly, whoever played this, like, did not play test very far, thinking about Charmander, like, getting to this point, because I just basically have to sit and grind and grind and grind and grind to even continue if you pick Charmander. So, did you ever find what your Pikachu was at?
Level 21.
Level 21 against like 12. So you had to be nearly double him to, like, beat him.
Essentially.
Oh, man.
And how long did you grind, like, and you fast forwarded too, but how long did you grind to, like, do that as well?
I think based off of the game records, the total time was roughly around, from the start of the game till the end of beating Brock, was around, like, 6.5-ish hours or something like that.
Yeah.
I also fast forwarded.
Yeah, no, like, I'm trying largely to not fast forward. Like, I'm trying to play the game mostly. It's only when I'm doing dedicated grinding sessions. But I was like, oh my gosh. So, Yellow did offer one advantage you've chosen not to take. But, like, in Gen 1, the Red and Blue, there is nothing you can catch that is strong against Rock type. Because it is just Bug Pokemon, Bird, and, like, Normal type. Like, those are your options. In Yellow, they did add a Mankey, which isn't great, but he's at least fighting type, so you have something, if for you to latch onto. You chose not to, but you did at least have something you could have done to, like, make it less miserable. But if you pick Charmander, you just have to grind. Either grind your Charmander up or get another team and grind them up. So while Christian just spring breeze flew through this like it was no problem, the two of us really had a heck of a time trying to get through this. So had y'all managed at this point when you got to Brock? Obviously, Austin isn't catching any Pokemon, but Christian, had you caught anything at this point to 8, or was it just Billiot still?
At this point, by the time I got to Brock, I had also caught a Pidgey, just because I wanted to have a backup Pokemon.
Okay, cool. Are you planning on keeping him around for very long, or is he gonna go?
I don't think I'm going to keep him around very long. I named him Birdie Boy, but I think Birdie Boy is going to fly the coop in a little bit.
That's great. Yeah, I'm obviously not planning on. I actually have my whole team planned out, and I don't want to. I don't want to share all that yet. I'll let y'all. I've told y'all on this, but I'll tell the podcast as we go. I think I know what my end game team is going to be, but suffice it to say, I will say this. Out of what I have right now, I think only Charizard is going to be in that team. I think the other 3 are going to end up being replaced as we go on. But I had to have something to beat Brock, so that's where we're at. And since you mentioned names, I named my Charizard Lander. I named my Beedrill Deadly Queen after that meme from JoJo's about the localized name of Killer Queen. Deadly Queen has no weaknesses, which was a joke because Deadly Queen is well, first off, it's a joke because it's a queen bee, and then it's a double joke because the joke Deadly Queen has no weaknesses, and I got her and she was completely weak to rock, so she definitely had some weaknesses. I got the Rattata and I named him O-Rats, and then since I knew Austin was playing Pokemon Yellow and I happened to catch a Pikachu, I named him Austin's Pika. So that was my team there.
Nice.
Yeah, that was a bit of a disaster, but it was fun. When I got to that point, I was frustrated. I'm feeling the age of this game compared to some of the others. The core is great, and it's still really fun, and I found myself constantly wanting to play it, but I was like, this is frustrating even with the fast forward feature. I can't imagine having to spend nearly 8 hours of real life just mindlessly tapping the A button to progress in a game that already doesn't have much of a story and is about collecting monsters. But in this early area, there's not a lot you can collect. There's really only like 5 lines, I think, at this point that you can even get. So I understand that they're railroading you a little bit to get you familiar with what's going on, but like, it does not feel like this is the smoothest start to a game that is like this, where the primary fun is collecting different monsters and using them intelligently in fights, and then only giving you 5 monsters and locking you into a thing where you don't have a weakness against the boss. That was a little frustrating for me. I don't know how you guys were feeling.
I definitely relate to that. Yeah, it's changed a lot. Looking, even between here and Gen 3, there's a big difference, at least in how it starts and how it allows you to progress at the very beginning.
Yeah. I mean, and we're looking back with hindsight, but I don't know. I feel at least this feels incomplete. It feels like a core of a good idea that needs to be expanded on. Are you getting any of that, Austin? Or are you just, because you're slamming through, you don't really care?
So I'm a little bit indifferent of it. It's pretty kind of similar as you guys described, the kind of mindless grinding of things. I'm not really trying to catch Pokemon, so the limited pool in the aspect of trying to collect things doesn't really affect how I'm running through the game at this point. It's just a matter of how strong can I make this one Pokemon get and have fun one-shotting everything. But the kind of main complaint, and this isn't really the game's fault at all, it's just technology at the time, is the game is pretty ugly, at least to me, to look at.
And you got the one with the better sprites. You got the less derpy looking versions.
And the sprites are not what I complain about that much. It's like roaming the world, because, and you had to help me with this honestly earlier, is my my default emulation settings were making it like hyper neon colors. So it was just blinding to me until you helped me find the setting to kind of make it more like how the Game Boy Advances actually looked back in the day. But even then, it's just pretty crappy colorization, and every time you went to a new area, it just put on a new filter on everything, and it just wasn't that enjoyable and pretty forgettable. It's just, the game to me is watching numbers and health bars go down.
That's fair. That does remind me of something, though, and that's that related to that. So yeah, one difference, so because we're playing Red and Blue, like, Christian, you're playing Red version, and I'm playing Blue, right?
Yeah.
So most of your game just looks red, right? Like, that's like what the palette is for the game, right? With little bits of blue in there.
Mine actually has some color to it.
You've got a few, but it's mostly red, isn't it?
For the most part.
Yeah.
But
mine's... Go on.
It is a little more than just Red and Blue. I'm not sure if, because I have the 3DS version, if they kind of like revitalize the colors a little bit, but there are some other colors in there.
But I think, like, when you're walking, most of the background is like red, right?
Yeah, for the most part.
Yeah, mine's the same way, where most of my background is blue with little bits of red. And occasionally you get a different color, but it's not very colored. So we're playing, these are originally Game Boy games. They didn't even have color, and we are playing the versions with a little bit of kind of fake color. Austin's version was the first one to be compatible with the actual Game Boy Color system. And they went a little nuts and didn't quite know how to use it yet. So every time you enter a different town, the entire background palette drastically changes, and like, not in a pretty way. So most of the time, you just get used to it. Like, your background is usually red. Any town you go to, it's mostly red, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and mine's mostly blue. His is like, this one's green and pink. And you go to the next one, it's like, this one's orange and brown. Like, it's just every different area is just like another like random puke-colored like thing.
It's pretty bad.
Oh, man.
Because they get better at this as we go on, and we know that. That's part of what we're examining. But, like, yeah, they did not... Color is not a well-done feature yet. But related to that, where I was talking about derpy sprites, I'm going to send in the Discord chat real quick, and if y'all will click on that. So I want you to scroll down till you see the pink thing. These are some of, like, the 10 derpiest sprites. Like, here's... Do you see Wigglytuff there?
Let me get back to Wiggly.
Yeah.
Oh my word.
Yeah. So there's Wigglytuff. They were trying to do like a perspective thing with his eyes, but I don't think it quite worked out. And if you go down to the next one, you've got a Dragonite, who y'all know what he's supposed to look like later. He's just got like a little T-Rex body. And he's like, and he's not nearly as fat as he normally is. And he's got like a big derpy head. And I'll post these in the video, you know. And then look at Venusaur, which you're going to get, Christian, in a bit. But look what he is.
It's got a palm tree.
That's Billy's future.
Oh, Billy. What did they
And
do
then
to you?
Charizard going on here. I don't know what's happening. He just, like, his hands are just floating there. Hypno.
I love Hypno. He looks
looks like
very
a-
suspicious.
He's like, yeah, that's not good. And then
More
yeah,
like
Golem.
Hypno.
Yeah, Golem there. He's just got like hands on his head. Like he looks like a little snake guy. I don't know. It looks pretty goofy.
Oh, man.
Moltres isn't looking his best either. It just kind of is a mess. And then yeah, friggin' look at Vileplume. Like
Oh, my
he's just
word. Nightmares.
Terrifying.
he's like gonna eat your soul. Mew looks.
I don't know what that is.
suspiciously- Do you know what Mew looks like? Is all I'm saying. Not good.
Oh, my word.
It's not a good time. And then Ekans, the snake, just at the bottom.
Looks like snake
My
mixed with a
word.
goose.
Yeah.
So those are great, and I'll post those so that people listening can see. You know, it'll be on YouTube, and most of this is just audio, but I will post those pictures so you all can appreciate that. But I wanted to share, as you, Austin, was talking about, I was like, yeah, it looks kind of derpy. Yes, it does. It gets better eventually, but this is the way we're still deciding on those designs. So I thought that was pretty funny. Okay, now with that nonsense out of the way. So we all beat Brock. It was beautiful. It was lovely. It was all we hoped for. After 7.5 hours for me, like 6 for Austin, and then Christian, do you know how long it took you roughly?
I think because of Vine Whip, it took me 3.
Yeah, it was like 3 hours, right? So yeah, one of these things is not like the other.
Yeah.
We got through that. That took pretty quick, thankfully. And then we said, all right, on to Mount Moon. So what was y'all's impression when we started heading right towards Mount Moon? Austin, I'm going to bug you first then.
Impression, it was just me just thinking like, okay, let's just move on. I don't actually remember the area leading up to Mount Moon at all. If there were trainers there, I beat them up pretty easily because at this point they didn't have any weaknesses to me. So I just zapped them to death and then moved on. Mount Moon is where it got a little bit interesting using the Chosen One strategy, as it was a war of attrition trying to figure out my way there because I have no idea the layout of Mount Moon. I didn't look up a guide, and I just decided to run around blindly trying to figure out my way through there. Ended up having to leave at some point to heal my Pikachu because attrition damage was just beating me up too much, especially when I encountered Geodudes, which I just had to try to slam them over and over again, which took forever when they kept using Defense Curl over and over again.
What? Related to that, no, keep going just a second, but I want to, one of my notes, the first note in Mount Moon is, every 5 freaking steps a Geodude, I swear, in all caps, is what I
Oh,
wrote.
yeah.
But yeah. So it was so what else happened? What you had to attrition your way through it, huh?
Yeah, I barely made it out alive, thankfully, on my second time trying to run through it. I did end up catching a Geodude, and I already forgot what other Pokemon I caught, but I just called them HM Slave 1 and HM Slave 2 for future preparations. So I don't get hard locked in the game where I can't catch a Pokemon because I keep one-shotting them. So got that hurdle accomplished, at least for now, and ended up making it through Mount Moon after a couple hours of trying to figure out my way around.
Okay, nice. Christian, what about you?
For me, it definitely seemed like they decided on the way to Mount Moon to throw as many trainers along that path as possible. Because
There are 7 in a row.
yeah, it goes from like you've encountered 2 trainers and a gym leader to here is a school bus full. So
no way to dodge it, because in Viridian there are more than 2, but you can avoid a lot of them.
Yeah, but there was just a lot. But I took down those trainers. I ended up catching a Nidoran, which I decided to name Nido Burrito.
Which we have loved since you've told us that. That has been our favorite thing.
Oh yeah, he's... I was really proud of that name.
That's so good.
I caught him, and then just because of movesets and preparing to catch Pokemon in the future, I ran across a Jigglypuff. I figured I'd catch it just for Sing, because it could put Pokemon to sleep and make it a little easier to catch them moving forward. That got the name Jiggly Wiggly. And then I went through Mount Moon. Again, it was very dark, very hard to navigate.
Was it dark?
But I made my way. Yeah.
No, okay, I'm not trying to be, because I guess I've played Gen 3. You've played Gen 3 though. You don't have to use flash to light up that cave, right? Like, it's just, you go through it, you can still see around you.
Yeah.
Do you remember it as having flash? I thought we didn't have that. My version didn't, at least.
The only kind of darkness on my side was, like, the color palette dropped to a really deep brown, but there wasn't any visibility issues.
That's true, but I don't think, because there is a mechanic in the game where you go into what are, like, mechanically dark caves, and you have to have moves to even be able to see around you, but I don't think this is one of those, right?
It is not.
No, you're right. I'm apparently thinking about Gen 3.
Well, we'll get to that. Oh, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. But yeah, it is dark in the cave, but it's not mechanically dark. Like, I think you can still see around you.
That's right.
All right, keep going, though. Sorry, I just want to make sure.
But yeah, tons of Geodudes. I one-shotted probably the first half of them with Vine Whip, and then I ran out of Vine Whip, so that made it a little more difficult. But then I able to Nido Burrito, leveled up pretty quickly, and as soon as I got the Moonstone, I made him Nido Burrito the King.
That's pretty great.
But yeah, it was good.
So you got through in one go then. You didn't have to go back either.
Yeah, I didn't have to go back.
Fantastic. Yeah, you're just playing easy mode is what I'm hearing. This is what I'm hearing.
Vine Whip was easy mode. Yeah.
So yeah, I had a bit of a time because I still had, the same team that I fought Brock with. I think this is the part where I started to get impressed, partially because I was done grinding before Brock and it had opened up a little bit. But I love, even though there's not much of a story, that Team Rocket is just kind of in the world before you figure out what they're up to. As far as a little, maybe I'm giving too much credit and it is just being lazy, but it felt really minimalist that even before, you ran in and they're like, oh, Team Rocket's the big bad guys and they want to hurt everything and hurt everyone and all that stuff. That they just kind of show up. You run into them like causing trouble in the world before you kind of find out that, like, because we know what the plot is because we've played games like these before or what's left of the plot, but like, there's not much of a plot. You don't know. You're like, hey, go get 8 gems. But there is actually a plot that involves Team Rocket and you taking them down. And that's the first time it shows up is here. And I kind of love that you just see them kind of making mischief. Like they're not concerned about you. You're not the hero trying to stop them. They're not trying to steal, even though in the show, I guess maybe they are for you, Austin, but they're not trying to steal your specific Pokemon. You just kind of run into them, like, causing problems. And they're like, hey, stop doing that. I think that's a lot of fun. Was the story any different for you, Austin? Was Team Rocket like after Pikachu like they were in the show or anything crazy like that?
Not that I have noticed, no. They just kind of popped up, did their usual anime voice line for Jesse and James, and then I one-shot them, and then they, like, twinkled away.
You got Jesse and James? See, because Jesse and James aren't in Red and Blue.
Yeah, I got Jesse and James. They did their anime voice lines, prepare for trouble, make it double, blah, 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 blah. And then when I beat them, they, like, were blasting off again. There was, like, a little twinkle effect, I think. And then moved on.
Okay, that's actually really cute.
That's awesome.
That's actually really cute. But yeah, I do love that it's just that there's a little bit of, I don't know if it's foreshadowing. This is the thing, because I told you everything felt like a game and not like a world until I got to this point. And then it's this little touch did make me feel like even on a silly 8-bit calculator game, I was like, oh, There is like a little bit of a world going on. I liked that. Oh, I forgot to mention some foreshadowing. Remember that first town? Do you guys remember? Because I guess we've all played, or Austin hasn't played Fire Red, so he has no foreshadowing for what's happening in this game, right?
No.
But remember that first town with the drunk guy? Do you remember that there was a gym in there that we couldn't get into?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, that's right.
Yeah, that's weird, right? Okay, anyway. I like that the game, while it is still very simple, manages to have a world that is interesting and have a few things in there that still pique my interest, even like 25 years later. And speaking of things that are like really wild and interesting to me 25 years later, this is where the collection aspect has hit me. I am grinding my gears trying to stop myself, because I know y'all don't want to do it and it'll slow us down, being like, I want to complete the Pokedex. I feel, because we'd have to trade and that'd be hard, but I'm like, I mean, you can't even really, we can't trade with Christian really, but I'm like, I want to catch all the Pokemon, because like I literally was going through, I already know what my team is going to be, but I saw a Paris and I was like, that's really cool, and so I just caught it, even though I didn't need it. I named it Mushroomin', and I just thought it was interesting that like 25 years later, this little calculator game still has me going, I want to catch all the Pokemon, even though like I know I don't really. It's kind of just shocking how well it works, in my opinion. I also caught a sand shrew once I got out of Mount Moon, like right after on the way to Misty. And he is going to stay part of my permanent team. I named him Vasher after our cat. So,
Nice.
yeah. Okay. So we get out of Mount Moon. What fossils did everyone pick, by the way? Kabuto for me.
I chose the other one, the
Homer
Helix.
Helix. Okay. So you've gone with the Twitch Lord.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Lord and Savior, the Helix fossil.
Yeah.
I
What
just
about you,
kind of
Austin?
spammed the button. I think I grabbed the Helix. I grabbed whatever was on the right side.
Yeah, that's the Helix one. Yeah. So
Okay.
that's if you don't know anything about the Twitch. Do y'all know about Twitch plays Pokemon, right?
Nope.
Okay, slight tangent then. Here we go real quick. So Twitch Plays Pokemon was when someone made a version of Pokemon Red. They made some small edits, but basically said, okay, anyone in chat can type in a command and it will like input it into Pokemon. And so the entire thing had to be like up, left, right, like to get the character and beat Pokemon. And it took them a while. And there were some like small additions where when they got to the puzzles, they introduced a mode that's like you could vote on what move was going to happen. But all of Twitch played and went through Pokemon. And because of like some weird shenanigans about like button placement, the Helix fossil was a item that would get checked very often, and so kind of some lore got built up around it that it was like he was praying to the Helix fossil for success. So that's kind of a Pokemon meme. Yeah, we should next time we'll talk about Twitch Plays Pokemon. But yeah, so you've chosen that. All right, so we were finally starting to wrap up. We made it to Misty. Let me guess how it went for you two. Let me know. How did it go? Was it so hard?
I didn't even break a sweat.
Yeah, that's what I thought. No trouble at all, right, Mr. Electric and Mr. Grass over there, right?
Zap.
Yeah, just showed up and just zapped. And you're like, okay, that's over. No, not for me. I'm not cool enough. I could have caught a Vileplume at this point, which is a grass type, but I think it's ugly as sin, and I don't want to. So, I didn't, even though I should have. And I'm like, I've still got Austin's Pika. I can make it through this. And he won, the trainers before, no problem. He one-shots Misty's Starmie, but then Misty Star You every single time it did Bubble Beam or Splash or whatever, I forget, did a critical hit. And so it killed Pikachu. And then I was like, okay, that's rough. I'll paralyze and do chip damage, but I got killed. So then I went back in. I healed it because at first I went in not even with everyone healed because I didn't care. I was just like, I'll be able to use Pikachu. That didn't happen. So yeah, no good for me. Yeah, no good for me. So I went in again and I was like, okay, this time I'm gonna heal everyone. And I went in. Oh, I remember the other problem was I was very unconcerned and I was over cocky, and so I had Vasher out first to get some experience, and I swapped in Pikachu and he just got one shot, instant crit, dead. And I was like, oh. So I went in again with Austin's Pika first, and while he did still get killed, I was able to use my other characters. You know, I had, like I said, I had Deadly Queen use poison, and then I had O-Rats just kind of tank Hyper Fangs till it died, which is not the most glorious way to finish Misty. But you know what? At this point, a win's a win. So that took about 2.5 hours for me from Brock to Misty. Did y'all time how long it took at that point?
I think that's about how long it took me.
Okay.
My
Austin,
total
were you
play
similar?
time from Brock to Misty was 3.5 hours.
So you took a little bit longer than the two of us, but because you were still maybe that Chosen One strategy, like when you're going through mazes, Chosen One strategy will be great for gym leaders, but I think the more we do these like mazes and dungeon areas, the more that Chosen One strategy might cause you some difficulties going forward. So that'll be interesting to see. I don't know how far we'll get the next one. Next guy we're going to try and get to is maybe Surge. We might get further because we did last time, but so that was our little adventure so far. Overall thoughts, impressions, wonderful feelings, hatred, go. Pros and cons.
I'd say so far, overall, the game really holds up. Like we've been saying, it's still captivating, it's still interesting, and just playing it, you still feel that kind of whimsy that you did back when you were a kid playing Pokemon, whatever generation it was. So I'd say this has been a good experience so far.
Okay, yeah. What about you, Austin?
It's been pretty enjoyable so far. I feel like the hardest part of the entire game is over for me at this point, now that I beat Brock and got through Mount Moon, and I think I'm just going to be at the point where I can just see how many Pokemon do I get to one-shot, and the ones that will actually stay in my mind will be the ones that didn't get one-shot somehow. So that'll be kind of how the rest of the game goes going forward.
I've had a lot more fun than I expected. While that grinding was still infuriating, I found, because we finished about 3 days, we all got there about 3 days before the deadline, because I was like, okay, so like, let's not set another gym, like maybe we can make it, but that'd be pressure. And I found myself not itchy, but like wanting to be like, oh, I want to play again. I want to go back to it. I'm sad that I have to wait another 3 days to keep playing, which is a good sign. I was really impressed that a game on a pocket calculator that is as derpy and unfinished as it is had enough, like you said, whimsy and interest for me that I was like sad I had to wait to play it some more. I wanted to keep going. So I think that's pretty fun. I've been really impressed. Christian, because you also mentioned, do you have any other fun facts that you want to like throw out there as a wind down before we end off the podcast?
I do have some more fun facts, but I think if you want to hear more, you'll have to wait till next week.
Okay. Well, any other final words then before we close it off?
Nope.
Christian, you?
I think just this has been fun, and let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, we'll hit the next one. All right, my final word is kumquat. See you guys later.
Watermelons.
Okay.
Apricot.
Apricot, there's a good one. That's Pokemon themed. All right, I'm going to stop the recording now.